Today, we're looking at those stories history sometimes tries to bury.
Yeah, the uncomfortable ones.
Exactly. And the courageous people who fight to keep those memories alive.
Yeah.
We're focusing on a work that, well, it really forced a global reckoning. We're doing a deep dive into Iris Chang's 1997 book, The Rape of Nanking, the forgotten Holocaust of World War II. I mean, this book didn't just shock people when it came out.
No, it absolutely stunned them. And it was huge in breaking a long silence, especially in the West, about just horrific events.
Right. Maybe set the stage a bit for us. What was the Nanking Massacre?
Sure. So we're talking about a period of intense mass murder and systematic rape. It was carried out by the Japanese Imperial Army in Nanking. It's called Nanjing, now in China.
When was this?
It started in December 1937 and lasted about 6 weeks. Just a truly brutal, devastating period that for a long time wasn't really part of the main World War II narrative outside Asia.
And Chang's book really shifted that focus, didn't it? It kind of broadened the lens beyond just Europe.
Absolutely. It pushed back against that Eurocentric view. You know, the stories focusing mainly on the Western Allies. Chang put the Asian experience, that memory, front and center.
What's really striking is how she approached it. It wasn't just history, was it?
Not at all. It was history, yes, incredibly documented, but it was also like a moral challenge, a really passionate argument against denial, against apathy, against trying to rewrite what happened. She showed how silence itself can be dangerous.
So to really get the impact, we need to understand how she built this story, right? How she takes us through it.
Exactly. We'll follow her structure, look at the events, the people involved.
Victims, rescuers, the whole picture.
Right. And through that, we can maybe start to understand why this book is still so important, so necessary, and yeah, why it still sparks debate. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Chang starts with the fall of Nanking. That's the first section, setting the scene.
Yeah, providing that crucial background. You need that context to even begin to process the horror that came next.
And what does she highlight in that lead up?
Well, she details Japan's growing militarism, its imperial goals, you know, in the decades before the war, and the intense nationalist propaganda that was fueling it all.
So this wasn't just random violence?
Not according to Chang. It was building for a while, baked into the ideology.
And the army itself? How were soldiers prepared for this?
That's a key point she makes. The indoctrination was extreme, particularly the dehumanization of the Chinese people.
Viewing them as less than human.
Exactly. That, combined with this incredibly harsh discipline and obedience code within the army, it basically created an environment where mass atrocities could happen without consequence, impunity.
And Nanking itself, the city, it fell quickly after Shanghai.
Shockingly fast, yes. A brutal takeover.
Okay, so the city falls quickly, chaos ensues. What about the leadership, the chain of command? Did Chang find they knew or even ordered this?
Her research points very clearly to the chain of command, either directly sanctioning the terror or at the very least encouraging it by just looking the other way. Tacit approval. And this leads to something really important in her work. She doesn't just list awful things. She explores the psychology, the ideology behind it, how ordinary soldiers become mass murderers, rapists.
She draws parallels.
Yeah, with other genocides, showing that unfortunately, this kind of capacity for evil isn't unique. It's something we always have to be watchful for.
Right. So with that foundation laid, she then moves into the core of it, this section called the massacre.
Yes. And this is, it's the emotional heart of the book, really difficult reading. She confronts you with the raw horror.
The scale of it.
Yeah.
What were her findings? The numbers?
They're almost impossible to grasp. She estimates between 200,000 and 300,000 people murdered. Many, many civilians.
And the rapes.
Tens of thousands of women, often horrifically in front of their families. And these acts often ended in, well, mutilation or death.
Just unimaginable.
Yeah.
And were these like rogue soldiers acting out, or was it more organized?
Chang's research makes it very clear. This wasn't just isolated incidents. It was widespread, systematic, and often encouraged or at least ignored by the military leadership.
So violence that went way beyond any military objective.
Oh, absolutely. Far beyond. She documents things like infants being bayoneted, elderly people burned alive, entire families wiped out, things that serve no military purpose, only terror.
It must have been incredibly hard to write about that level of detail. Why did she feel it was necessary?
Well, her argument, and it's a powerful one, is that you have to show the raw horror. You can't sanitize it. You can't reduce it to just numbers.
Right, because that loses the human element.
Exactly. She uses survivor testimonies, diaries, letters, photos, all to put a human face back on this tragedy. to give the victims back their stories, their dignity.
But it's not all darkness in the book, is it?
Yeah.
And she goes into the third section, the aftermath.
Yeah.
There are these moments of light.
Yes, absolutely. Amidst all the brutality, she highlights incredible acts of bravery and resilience. It's quite inspiring, actually.
Like the Nanking safety zone.
Exactly. A small group of Westerners who stayed behind when the city fell. They set up this zone, basically a refuge.
And save lives. Who were these people?
Chang introduces us to some really remarkable figures. People like John Rabe. He was a German businessman and, kind of surprisingly, a member of the Nazi Party.
Wow.
And Minnie Vautrin, an American missionary. People like them risked everything. They sheltered tens of thousands of Chinese civilians.
How do they even manage that with the Japanese army running rampant?
They used whatever they had.
Yeah.
Their diplomatic status, maybe their foreign identity, their connections, sometimes literally just standing between soldiers and civilians.
Incredible courage.
And they documented everything. They wrote letters, sent reports, tried to get the world to pay attention. So they saved lives, but they also saved the truth, in a way.
So the war ends. Were there attempts at justice, like the war crimes tribunals?
Yes, there were attempts. The Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal, other trials. They tried to hold some people accountable.
But Chang wasn't satisfied with how that played out, was she?
No, she's quite critical. She argues that very quickly, the new politics of the Cold War started to overshadow the need for justice.
So?
Well, Japan became a key ally for the U.S. against communism. So holding them fully accountable for wartime actions kind of took a backseat to geopolitical strategy.
So many perpetrators got away with it.
Sadly, yes. Many were never punished. And Chang points out how this connects to Japan's ongoing and often controversial official stance on Nanking. Some factions there still deny it happened or try to drastically minimize the scale.
Let's talk about the book's strengths. One thing that really stands out is how she humanizes everyone involved.
Definitely. She uses meticulous research, but brings these people to life. Victims, rescuers. She finds their voices. Chinese survivors, yes, but also Japanese soldiers who confessed. Foreign witnesses.
It's the personal stories, the photos, the documents. They make it so immediate.
Incredibly effective. It builds this powerful emotional connection. Now, it's fair to say the book did get some criticism from academic circles.
What kind of criticism?
Some historians felt that while her passion was undeniable, her methodology wasn't always as, let's say, rigorously detached as academic history sometimes demands.
Meaning?
Well, things like occasionally relying on sources that were maybe anecdotal or disputed without enough critical backup. Minor factual points were questioned here and there, and some felt the language was perhaps overly emotional at times.
Did those criticisms actually undermine the core findings, though?
Generally, no. I mean, the central facts of the massacre aren't seriously disputed by mainstream historians because of these points. Most scholars would agree her book is still one of the most important popular histories on Nanking. It had a huge impact, even with those academic critiques.
And beyond the history, the book is really about memory, isn't it? The politics of remembering.
Very much so. Chang is relentless in criticizing Japan's reluctance to fully acknowledge and apologize for the massacre.
She compares it to Germany.
Starkly. She contrasts Japan's stance with Germany's efforts to confront its Nazi past. And she asks, why the difference? She digs into how things like nationalist textbooks, government silence, public denial, how they create this sort of historical amnesia.
Which harms survivors, obviously.
Profoundly. And it distorts the bigger picture of World War II.
But she's careful not to just blame all Japanese people, right?
Oh, absolutely not. That's crucial. She avoids that kind of generalization. She clearly distinguishes between the government's actions and policies and the people themselves. And she actually highlights Japanese individuals who've courageously spoken out for historical truth.
So her focus is really on justice and remembrance.
Exactly. For the victims, for history itself.
We can't really talk about this book without acknowledging the immense personal cost to Iris Chang herself. It's just tragic.
It really is. Her suicide in 2004 at only 36, it was a shock.
And it's widely believed the work itself contributed.
Yes. The sheer psychological weight of immersing herself in such horrific material day after day, that, plus the intense backlash she faced.
Especially from those denying the massacre.
Particularly from right-wing Japanese nationalists who attacked her relentlessly. It's thought that combination took a terrible toll on her mental health.
Her death really highlights the burden, doesn't it? The cost of telling these kinds of truths, especially when powerful forces want them buried.
It does. It speaks volumes about the emotional burden, but also the real-world resistance you can face.
But her legacy, She remains this symbol of courage, right?
Absolutely. Moral courage, intellectual integrity, that commitment to giving voice to the voiceless, preserving memory, even at great personal risk. It's incredibly powerful.
So wrapping up, The Rape of Nanking. It really is a landmark book.
No question. It's this unique blend of journalism, history, and moral testimony.
It might not tick every single academic box for detachment.
Right. Maybe not in terms of pure methodology for some scholars, but its value isn't just in the footnotes. It's in the passion, the humanity, the absolute refusal to let this be forgotten.
Iris Chang really did force a global conversation about something many preferred to ignore.
She absolutely did. She changed how we talk about World War II, but also, I think, how we talk about historical trauma, about justice, about what it means to remember.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. This ongoing struggle over difficult history, like Nanking. What does it tell us about memory itself? About how powerful denial can be, and ultimately about our own responsibility to the past?